It's at the Letters, presented by Miller Lite, the original light beer. Arden Zwelling, Ben Nicholson Smith. Our producers are Christian Ryan, Mike Tassoni. Today is Thursday, April 22nd. Happy to be here talking to you about the Toronto Blue Jays. And Ben, let's just 35,000 square feet, pull back, bird's eye view, big picture, state of affairs. If you're a Blue Jays fan and you've watched every game of this season, you probably think the team is doing worse than it actually is. They're only a couple games beneath 500, but I would say the standard of play and the style of play, and the way they've gotten to those results has not been the most pleasing and the most encouraging. So if you're a Blue Jays fan and you're just, a little dour right now or a little pessimistic about the way things have been going, I totally understand, because, granularly at that level, the Blue Jays have not necessarily been playing well.
Oh no, yeah, no, they've missed some opportunities. That Ryu start against Boston, losing 3 of 4 against Kansas City, not great at all. But like you said, once you get to the point that you actually zoom out, and it's hard to do, right? Because it's so fun to obsess over the granular of every Kevin Biggio throw or every missed spot on a Hyunjin Ryu changeup. Not that there are many of those, but it's hard to zoom out. And so I think it's a good idea to take that 35,000 foot view and say, all right, this is a pretty good team. They're 8-10. They haven't played great. They're going to get some players back. Things are fine. It's not great, but it's fine.
Yeah. You would like it to be better, certainly, right? And you would like the Blue Jays to be, 5 games above 500. You'd like them to be in the position that the Red Sox are in right now and to have had
Sure.
some unexpected good results. But I mean, I think that, when you look at it, you mentioned it, 2 games under 500. It feels worse, right? But, I've been of the mind that if the Blue Jays get to the end of April, right around 500, that is fine. All things considered. And you can even kind of layer in the fact that they have a plus 10 run differential, which is 3rd best in the American League, 6th best in baseball. They are somehow leading the American League in ERA with 9 pitchers currently on IL. They are about to add George Springer to the lineup. They are not adding just a run-of-the-mill average replacement level player. They are adding a legitimate all-star, Silver Slugger, MVP candidate to the lineup. It's not the same thing as hopefully Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Heats up at some point. You're adding George Springer to your lineup, not to mention Teoscar Hernandez, who won a Silver Slugger last season as well. I just think that it's somewhere in between, right? The club's pitching probably isn't as good as it's been so far, particularly considering a lot of the arms they've been without. The offense isn't as bad as it's been so far, considering the bats that are in this lineup. It's like you said, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you kind of look at the standings right now, which is a dangerous game to play at this point in the season. But St. Louis Cardinals, 8-10. Atlanta, 8-10. I mean, I'm not worried if if I were to indulge in that kind of feeling of are the Cardinals still contenders? Yeah, they're still contenders. So is Atlanta. We'll see what happens. It doesn't mean they're going to make the playoffs. They might not. Things can go awry for any team, and things could get worse for the Blue Jays too. I mean, There's no guarantee that Bo Bichette doesn't pull a hamstring. They're not exempt from that. But as things sit right now, as we look at things right now, they're totally fine. And you compare it to the Yankees, you compare it to the Astros, who have lost 9 of 10. There are certainly teams where there's maybe some more real cause for concern on a big picture level, and I don't think the Jays are there. But with the Jays, and I know we're going to get to this, but it's still, even if we agree that things are fine big picture, we can still look at the granular and say, hey, there are some issues here on a smaller scale.
Yeah, I think the Bo Bichette hamstring strain that you just brought up, sent chills through my spine, because a team can only withstand so many injuries, and I would say the Blue Jays are right at that maximum amount. There's probably a range of injuries that you can withstand as a minimum and maximum, and they are right up against it, man, with the amount of guys on the IL. The Blue Jays have 6 players on their 40-man roster who are not currently active or on IL. That's
Right.
wild. Like, that is
Yeah.
insane. We came into this season saying, like, hey, depth is going to be more important than ever in 2021, and your organization, like your full 40 is going to be tested. But like for the Blue Jays, it has been tested exceptionally. And they have gotten to a point where they're 8-10, like, which is fine considering some of the players they've been relying on. Think about how many innings Tommy Malone has had to pitch, and how much Joel Payamps we've had to see. Josh Palacios is an everyday player on this team. Like, none of these things were things that, coming into the season when everyone was making their lineup projections, and here's how they'll look against lefties and righties, and here's how they're going to use the bullpen, all that, waste of time. This is not how anybody would have drawn it up, but this is the reality for the Blue Jays. So, like, yeah, if they had another, like, really bad catastrophic injury right now, like, that could be really tough. They need to get to a point where they are starting to return some of these players that they have been without and looking more like what they expected to be.
And it really seems like that's about to start happening very, very soon. It sounds like George Springer and Teoscar Hernandez are about to be activated, might be activated by the time a lot of our listeners are tuning in and listening to this. Tyler Chatwood on his way back, Jordan Romano on his way back. So there are reinforcements. In the meantime, they have off days. And look, I'm not trying to say that things are good or that this has been a good start. I don't think this has been a good start for the Blue Jays. I think it's been okay. It's been fun.
So. Well, maybe we could take a little bit of a more granular look at some of the Blue Jays, their hitters in particular, who have been struggling a little bit to start the year, and kind of check where our confidence level is on all of them. And let's start with Marcus Semien, who, free agent acquisition, 1 year, $18 million deal. Expected to be a pretty, I don't know if it's like a big part of this offense, but like certainly a key cog in it. Guy who's going to play every day. You don't give a guy $18 million if you're not expecting a pretty good level of production. What do you make of what you've seen so far from Marcus Semien at the plate?
Well, you like the home runs, and there's not been a ton else really to go on or to grab onto. If you're a Blue Jays fan looking for signs that he's going to be closer to that MVP candidate he was in 2019, there's not a ton. I think that being said, I would expect that he gets back to being average to a bit above average major league hitter. I just think that when you look at his finish in 2020, you look at his 2019, you look at the flashes of power he's showing now, I think there's enough there to believe that he's probably going to be pretty solid as a hitter.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of breaking this down on the broadcast the last couple nights, and that is that Marcus Semien's pulling everything. Joe Siddle had a great piece about it, and that's interesting because that does stand in sort of stark contrast to his career norms when he typically, uses more of the field. I mean, I think his power has always predominantly been pull side, as is with a lot of guys, but typically you're seeing more kind of base hits the other ways, singles, occasional doubles. It's probably too early to say like this is a thing, but I think it's definitely something worth monitoring. And whether, I'm sure he's diving in with Guillermo Martinez on just, what he can do kind of approach wise, setup wise with his swing, maybe not to pull the ball so much. And Marcus Semien's a guy who's talked about it. He's a guy who will make little tweaks in his batting stance and in his setup, like from game to game. Even he said, the big benefit of being an everyday player is you get to try stuff out and experiment and kind of adjust as the season goes on. So it's going to be an interesting evolution to watch. But, so far, he's still hitting the ball really hard. He's still got great exit velos and hard hit rate. There's nothing, in the contact numbers that like stands out to you. I would just take the fact that, he has a 208 batting average on balls in play, that maybe a little better luck, starts using, a bit more of the field, getting, hitting into the shift a little bit less. I would expect that he's going to come around. And that's really actually been like the story of his career. Like 2019, you were mentioning, kind of stands in stark contrast to what happened earlier in his career where he was like pretty streaky. Like he was, he would have like these hot stretches and then go into a cold funk and then another hot stretch. Like the crazy thing about 2019, like he started really hot and then had a disastrous May and then heated up in June and just did not stop. Then had a massive second half. Like he wasn't an all-star in 2019. Like that's how rough his like first half was. It's hard to not be an all-star and to finish third in MVP voting.
Yeah.
So I would expect Marcus Semien's going to come around.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And he's got, the experience. It wasn't one that he would have wanted, but he has the experience from last year and from 2019 of starting slowly and coming back from it. So whatever, lessons he learned during that time of, finding ways to overcome those numbers that are a little disappointing, maybe he applies them now and turns things around a little bit offensively.
How about Kevin Biggio? Because the adjustment we saw from the Blue Jays just in lineup construction wise on Wednesday was moving Marcus Semien out of that leadoff spot, putting Kevin Biggio back up there. Two guys who have kind of been struggling to find their stride early in the season.
That's right. Yeah, I think, with Biggio, there's a little more concern for me. Not a huge amount. I still think, it's early. There's time for people to work things out. If you look at Kevin Biggio entering this season, he had played basically 162 Major League games and been worth like 5 WAR. So let's not forget that. But I think at the same time, just very simple stats like his walk rate and strikeout rate. They're trending in the wrong direction. His walk rate is down, and that's obviously a big part of his offensive game, a big part of his offensive value. And his strikeout rate is up. And, when you pair that with the fact that he does have some trouble hitting fastballs at high velocity, you just wonder if what it's going to take for him to make that adjustment and get it back to the rate that he was at in 2019 and 20 when he was a very good player. So to me, I still think we've seen a lot from Biggio over the years to suggest that he can adapt, that he can adjust, but offensively and defensively, but we'll get to the defensive side of things. Offensively, I think there's a room for a little concern here.
There's a couple things there. First and foremost, we should acknowledge, I think Kevin Biggio is having trouble gripping his baseball bat right now, because he has taken 3 different scorchers off his bare hand, and when he was out of the lineup for a couple days, that's just because the swelling and the pain was so bad that he literally could not play, and that was fairly recent, and he's now back in games.
That was Thursday,
right? I promise you, he is not fully over those issues. I promise you he's still carrying them and he's getting day-to-day treatment, but he's not healing from them as quickly as he could because he's out there playing 9 innings every night and he's swinging a bat, right? So I that could be contributing. You also mentioned, kind of his need to make an adjustment going forward. Well, he is trying to make proactive adjustments this season, and he's kind of talked about tweaking his approach a little bit, trying to be more aggressive early in the count, and to make more contact, 2 strikes, get rid of the leg kick and kind of shorten up to the ball. And a lot of that, he was explaining the other day, is due to the fact that he thinks that on every scouting report in the league it says this guy does not swing at the first pitch you throw, and with 2 strikes you can get him to look at strike 3. So it's it is kind of an interesting push-pull that is occurring here. You want hitters to be proactive about adjustments. You don't want the league to figure them out and to exploit them for 2 months and to have disastrous results, then have to make the adjustment there, right? You want to kind of stay ahead of the pitchers, but you also don't want to do anything that compromises what you're best at, and that's where the margin is kind of thin for Kevin Biggio, because as you said, he's got one of the best eyes in baseball, and this is a guy who can walk at a pretty good rate, and he still is taking his walks, not quite to the degree that he has in the past because he's swinging a lot more, and he's said that's purposeful. The concerning thing so far is that he's kind of swinging more at pitches outside the zone, which is not something that we've come to expect from him, because his eye is so elite. So I don't know, it's kind of finding that happy medium for him between being too passive and too aggressive, right? And it's probably a really hard thing to do, in the moment at the big league level when pitchers throw really amazing stuff and know how to attack you. You don't want to be looking at strikes, but you also don't want to be too aggressive on the wrong pitches. So I think it's just going to be interesting to kind of track how that evolves as the season goes on.
For sure. The margins there are really important, right? If he's expanding his zone and making poor contact on a pitch that's 2 inches off the plate, well, I guess there's value in that because he wants to throw teams off. He doesn't want to be predictable. He can't be predictable. But at the same time, if that would have been ball 3 and maybe led to a walk, there's a case for doing that too. So it's definitely a push-pull. But right now it's not adding up. It's not working the way he would want it to. I think that's pretty clear. So I think going forward, a little bit of concern, not a huge amount.
Can I say something about batting order construction also before we move on from
Let's hear it. Yeah.
from these two players? Because obviously we saw that adjustment in the order on Wednesday, that shuffle. And all of a sudden, Kevin Biggio had a strong game, and Marcus Semien had a strong game. But like Kevin Biggio didn't get on base 3 times on Wednesday because he's more comfortable as a leadoff hitter.
Right.
He got on base 3 times because he's Kevin Biggio, and he gets on base a lot. Marcus Semien didn't have, I think it was 2 hits and a walk on Wednesday because he's more comfortable hitting 6th. It's because he's a good hitter. It's because he's Marcus Semien, and he's probably not going to have this like 40 OPS plus for the entire season when he's typically been like a 98, 99, 100 OPS plus guy. Like to me, Ben, like the only thing that, you know, batting order construction impacts meaningfully is that if you hit 1 to 4 as opposed to like 6 to 9, you're going to get like 80 to 100 more plate appearances over the course of a season. Like that is the only impact I think that should be attributed to it, which is why like my prescription is always put your best hitters up top and don't worry about it, because you want your best hitters making the most plate appearances. But there's like no need to complicate things and to like lean on these archaic narratives about how like guys are more comfortable in certain spots in the batting order, and that, you know, that tweak or that shuffle had anything to do with the results we saw on Wednesday.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you could just, you know, put players in their optimal comfort zone and get another 30 points of OPS, or, you know, it's not that easy. I think teams would do it if it were. So yeah, I totally agree. It's great for the Jays that it worked out that way. Doesn't mean that it was a stroke of genius by Charlie Montoyo. Doesn't mean it was a bad move either. It's just a move. It happened to work in that situation. And I do think that, you know, lineup construction is interesting. I think it's interesting I know it's interesting to fans. I do think, again, when we zoom out a little bit, it's not super, super essential. It's more what hitters you have than how you sequence them, according to all the studies that have been done, right? And so to me, like, I actually think there is an optimal spot for Kevin Biggio in the batting order. So this is kind of like a little mini tangent to supplement what I just said there. But I actually think the optimal spot for Biggio would be hitting 8th in the National League ahead of a pitcher, because then they would walk him all the time because they just want to get to the pitcher. But that's like a fantasy world. We're living in real life here, and he plays for the Toronto Blue Jays, and so there's no right answer. He's a good hitter, so you probably want him toward the, you know, depending on how he's doing, could be toward the top. He could be hitting 6th, 7th. It's not like there's a clear right wrong.
The thing you said there that was so key is that what matters is the hitters that you have. Like that's what matters. And that's how teams construct lineups. They don't do it like, oh, we got a lefty tomorrow, all right, we got to get all of our righties in there. Like they have like their preferred hitters against individual pitchers. They think about, who do we want against Eduardo Rodriguez? Who do we want against Garrett Richards? Who do we want against Garrett Cole? And it's different for each guy based on what the pitcher throws, like his arm angle, his spin, his perceived velocity, like where he likes to work in the zone. And then you have your hitters on your team who have success against pitches that come in on that plane or that behave in a similar fashion, spin similarly, you know, guys that like balls in the part of the zone where pitchers like to work. So you basically just have like your top 9 against each pitcher.
Sure.
And then you're just like cross-referencing that with like who's healthy enough to play, like who needs a day off their feet, like, you know, what type of workload management you need to do here. And then also like who's on the mound for you. So what your optimal defensive construction is behind, you know, Hyun-Jin Ryu or Tanner Roark or whoever's on the mound. And then you just order up your 9 dudes. And like, look, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and George Springer are going to be in the top 9 for just about every pitcher, I would assume, every pitcher across baseball, because they're undeniable. But Rowdy Tellez and Josh Palacios might not, you know? No. And like really good teams in baseball, like the Dodgers, are picking that top 9 guys against a pitcher from a greater capable group of 11 or 12. Like that's what the Dodgers do. And that's what the Rays have done. Like you don't want to be like, just here's our 9 every day because we only have like 9 guys that we trust. Like you want actually 1, 2, 3 guys who are undeniable hitters, who are Springer, Guerreros, Bichettes, and they're in there all the time because they have the ability to lead the league in offensive categories. And then beneath them, you've got like 6, 7, 8 guys who are capable big league hitters who can hit at the level but aren't superstars and just play quite a bit. They don't play every day, but they play quite a bit. Like, you want a lineup that looks different every day. You want options. Like, you want log jams and depth. Like, you want to have guys moving around the batting order. You don't want to have the same 9 guys every day. Like, it's not ideal to rely on a small amount of guys every day over 6 months because they're going to wear down. And there's going to be health issues and there's going to be performance decline. You want to be picking a top 9 from a greater collection of 11 or 12 guys who can play at the level. That's what the best teams do.
That's right. Yeah, there's no such thing as capital T, capital L, the lineup. Like, it's a constantly moving entity for every team in baseball, even the bad ones, but especially for the good ones. And the one thing that interests me is maybe whether they move Vladdy up to the 2 spot at some point. Vlad, Bo, Springer. That sounds like a pretty good top 3 to me when those 3 are ready.
Sure, Springer, Bo, Vlad.
Right, I didn't mean in that order, but yes.
Yeah. Whatever way you want to do it. Like, I'll just put your best hitters at the top, man. I'm so tired of having these same discussions every year. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is next on our list here. And, like, I know I just called, like, Marcus Semien streaky. And it's kind of funny that, like, we call certain guys streaky when really, like, all MLB hitters are streaky. Yep. And every season is just an accumulation of good runs and cold spells that, like, in the end, in the aggregate, end up looking like something. But man, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. can be streaky. Like, we've seen it, right? Like, would you be surprised at all to see him go on a 2-week tear in early May like we've seen him do in the past?
Not at all. And as bad as his numbers are, it's hard to be really concerned when you've seen over the course of his big league career, he's very consistently been a good hitter. And going into this year, I had a high degree of confidence that he would hit and that he would hit very well. So 57 at-bats, plate appearances, I'm not going to change that. I still think he's going to produce.
He's still putting the ball in play as he does, which is kind of, he's got great bat-to-ball ability. He's clearly got great hand-eye. His strikeout rates don't, like, jump out at you, or, the contact rate and the swing percentages are all normal. Like everything scans. Like, I think he's just not seeing the results yet. But I can tell you, like, the guy, like, hits the ball really hard. And if he keeps putting the ball in play as often as he is with high exit velocities, he's gonna see results. Like, the one thing that kind of sticks out when I look at his numbers is he's just not hitting as many line drives as he normally does. He's kind of had more fly ball contact. So if he just made a little adjustment there, I think that you'd see some much better results. And, like, the other thing that really stands out actually is that his expected stats and his actual results, there's a pretty massive gulf in there. So just considering all those things, I would expect that this is a guy who's going to come around, and probably in a pretty big way.
I think that's pretty fair. What do you make of their catchers, Kirk and Jansen? They've both been off to pretty rough starts at the plate.
Yeah, I don't expect much offensively out of catchers these days, but this level of production is bad. Like, even in that context, the Blue Jays need more from the position, and it's got to be with these 2 guys, because I don't think that, like, you're just going to give Riley Adams a bunch of rope at some point. Like, these are the 2 guys, so these guys need to come around. And I mentioned Lourdes Gurriel Jr.'s expected stats. Danny Jansen's expected stats are putrid. Like, they're really not looking good. He's not hitting the ball hard at all. Like, there's just not, like, an optimistic way to paint his results thus far. And even with, like, Kirk, like, the exit velocity is down a bit. I think he's still hitting the ball hard enough. He's getting the ball in the air, but he certainly is not mashing at the rate that he has coming up through the minors, and then obviously in an extremely small sample last year. So it's interesting, right? Because they're in this timeshare right now where they're basically like splitting time right down the middle. So it's kind of like hard for either of them to accumulate enough of a sample to like draw really like clear conclusions off of. Because like for as poor as like Danny Jansen's results have been and the way he's putting the ball in play has been, like, 2 games of like bearing the baseball, right? Like if he has that Tampa Bay Rays playoff game where he gets like 2 homers and then the next day he's got a couple doubles, all of a sudden his season looks a lot better because he's probably only got like 40 plate appearances so far. Like guys like Bo and Vlad have like 80, right? So they just haven't like put up that volume and that bulk of results yet. But the Blue Jays like absolutely need more offensively out of that position, and it's not exactly a high standard to reach.
No, that's right. I mean, so you look at Jansen, you mentioned the expected numbers. So I got them in front of me here. Average exit velocity percentile, 10th percentile. Hard hit percentage percentile, 6th. Expected WOBA, 4th percentile. Expected batting average, 3rd percentile. These are not good. This is not what you want to see. That's very, very low, which is to say that, in all cases, 90% of major league hitters are creating better contact than Danny Jansen. It's not at all encouraging. I mean, it's like you said, there's no way to spin it. Nor are we trying to. It's just, that's the reality. He's not hitting. He's not making good contact at all.
The one thing that's tough is that he just doesn't have that much. Like he's got like 40 plate appearances.
Right.
Is right. Like if he, you know what I mean? Like if he hits like 4 balls hard, all of a sudden those numbers would go up quite a bit.
Yes. I mean, yeah. And the Jays would love it because that would probably lead to a couple hits, right? Like have we seen 4 hard hit balls from Danny Jansen this year? I mean, that might double his, and I'm not trying to pile on him and just pointing out the facts, right? Like he has not hit the ball hard. That's not good. 40 chances isn't a lot, but it's also 40 chances. That's something.
Yes. And I can't say enough, like the expectations offensively for a catcher are very, very low. But neither guy has reached them so far. And there isn't like a clear alternative. Like there isn't somewhere to go. Alejandro Kirk was the alternative, right? But he's seeing half the plate appearance as a catcher for this club. So those are the 2 guys that they're gonna go forward with. And again, it's 18 games. Like this could look very different by like the end of the month. Like by the next time we record, well, maybe not with all the off days that they have, but 2 weeks from now, this could look very, very different. But I really do think the Blue Jays, like, they're just splitting time between these guys and saying like, hey, somebody take this job. Like somebody go with it, please. Like somebody start hitting and you'll start getting more playing time. And until that happens, like I think they're just going to keep splitting the playing time right down the middle and see if one of these guys can figure it out.
And keep them relatively fresh. I think it makes sense until someone starts making the case for more.
We shall see. We shall see. It'll be interesting to watch how these things progress as the season goes on. But when we continue on At the Letters, we must talk about the best pitching staff in the American League, apparently, and that is the Toronto Blue Jays. When we continue on At the Letters.
All right, we are back on At the Letters, and it is time now for Keeping It Light, presented by Miller Lite. Okay, Arden, I've got a few statements here, and I want to see whether you agree or disagree with them. So I'm going to throw them at you. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
All right. So let's start with Tommy Milone. He has pitched a lot of innings for this Blue Jays team, contrary to expectations. So the statement is this: Tommy Milone is actually kind of good.
He has been actually kind of good, and he has absolutely been useful for a club that's needed some innings out of its bullpen and needed some guys to step up. Like, it's a little bit of an underrated story right now is how some of those end of bullpen types, like your Tommy Malones and your Joel Payamps and Anthony Castros of this world, have filled in like really adequately for a bullpen that's needed innings. You mentioned, the innings, like Tommy Milone is 4th on the Blue Jays in innings pitched. 18
Crazy.
games into the season, which is pretty wild. So look, he's getting the job done. Like, we all see what we're seeing. It's an 84-mile-an-hour fastball. It's tough to live and survive at the MLB level with it. But I do actually like his changeup quite a bit, and I like how he uses it, the ball in the zone. Like, I would really, really, really like it if he had like a 92-mile-an-hour fastball to play it off of, because like the margin for error with him is just so slim, right? He is, his command has to be exceptional every time out, and it has been. Like, to his credit, like, he is burying that changeup, and he is not leaving his fastball over the heart of the plate, and he's not getting hurt, and that's great. But we know that like every pitcher in baseball takes them out on certain days when they do not have their best command and they aren't feeling their best. So when that day comes for Tommy Milone, is he going to be missing over the heart of the plate? Is he going to be leaving that fastball up or that changeup up? And then all of a sudden it's big league hitters teeing off against some of the softest velocity in the game. So that could get ugly, but you can't take away from what he's done to this point. He's been super useful for this club.
Right. To me, he's the kind of pitcher that in an 0-2 count, you actually really like where he is because of that changeup, because he throws it below the zone and he gets swing and miss on it. Like it's actually a pretty good 0-2 pitch. But if you're in a 3-0 count with Tommy Milone on the mound, like you're kind of in trouble, because if you have to throw 84 anywhere near the heart of the plate, big league hitters are just going to destroy it more often than not. So that's Tommy Milone. Next one up I have here for you, Arden, has to do with the Yankees. They're 6-11. If you read any of the coverage around this team, it's a little more intense than of course most major league teams. And in this case, there's some panic. So what do you think? Are the Yankees actually in trouble?
No, they'll be fine. They could use a little work on the pitching side of things, I would suggest. But the thing about the Yankees is that they correct those problems and they find a way. If you're not getting it done, they will find somebody to come in and get it done. And I don't know if for them that's going to come internally this season. At least at first, I would imagine it does. Or it might also come with Corey Kluber and Jordan Montgomery, and Domingo Germán and whoever else is in that rotation right now. It might come with a trade at some point this season. They will address that issue, and their lineup is too deep and too good. I still think the Yankees are going to win this division.
I agree. I think the Yankees are a very, very good team. And even if they're not left-handed enough or they're not, athletic enough, they're still just stacked. And I think they're going to win a lot of games. But all right, what about the Red Sox then? So they're 12-7. So here's the next agree or disagree statement for you. Are they every bit as good as the Blue Jays?
Yes. I guess so. I think they're right there. I think these two teams are, more level than maybe people gave them credit for coming into the season. I kind of thought the Red Sox would surprise some people this year, and I figured that the Blue Jays would kind of be contending with them for that third place in the American League East, with the Yankees being the best team, and the Rays I figured would finish second and claim a wild card spot. So yeah, I think that the Red Sox and Blue Jays are pretty level. The Red Sox are better than people think that they are, and they've shown it to this point.
I agree. I think the Red Sox are better than people think. I still think the Jays are better than the Red Sox, but we have a lot of time left to determine that one. All right, next up, the Giants and Kevin Gausman. We've talked about Kevin Gausman more than we've probably talked about some Blue Jays pitchers on this podcast, and he's an intriguing arm. He's really interesting. We know the Jays liked him and offered him a contract last offseason, so we kind of speculated that he might be someone who ends up being a trade target, but the Giants are playing well. So agree or disagree, the Giants are playing too well, and Kevin Gausman will no longer be on the trade market.
I have to adjust my prediction. I think Kevin Gausman will pitch for an American League East club later this season. I don't know, I think it'll be the Blue Jays, but I could also see the Yankees coming in and just plucking him away. But no, yeah, the Giants have to trade him at some point this season. It's not like the Giants are built to be a sustainable winner right now. It's not like they're really even in their competitive window. They're having success this year, great, but their roster is old as hell. I do not have a lot of faith in them continuing to play as well as they have. Even if they do continue to hum along at a little bit over 500, the Dodgers and Padres in that division, man, and those two teams are going to separate and put up a bunch of wins as things go on here. So the Dodgers have to trade Kevin Gausman. He was qualified, so you can't qualify him again. So you're not looking at draft pick compensation if you hang on to him. They absolutely have to move him, and I bet you he gets moved to the Blue Jays or the Yankees.
I think he will be traded. As for where he goes, who knows? After the James Paxton experiment, I'm not sure that I'm ready to go quite so bold as to predict.
Now.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Okay, so that brings us to our last one here, and this is also a pitcher. So another trade candidate along the lines of Gausman, and we thought Paxton, but obviously not. Now that he is undergoing TJ, so Danny Duffy could be in that tier, in that group of the most desirable pitchers available at the deadline. Royals are playing kind of well, though. So agree or disagree, Danny Duffy will be the most coveted deadline arm this summer.
I don't know about most, but I think he'll be up there, and I think he'll be moved as well. I think if you're the Royals, you kind of have to move him. Again, not a team that is like in the heart of its competitive window at the moment, although they are, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I thought the Royals would be better than people thought they would, and they have been, but they're going to have to move him. Like anybody, any pitcher that close to free agency, I think that, even clubs like the Royals have come around on the fact that, you got to move them and, I hate this word, but, maximize the asset.
The one thing I wonder about here is whether the Royals see Duffy as kind of like a franchise piece. And he's been there for a while. I mean, I think it's close to a decade at this point. And I wonder if they see him kind of like their, pairing to Sal Perez, almost in a Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright light kind of situation where they would really have to be bowled over. So I kind of think that we'll see how it goes, but I kind of think that the Royals will hold on to Duffy.
Well, and they are not going to be bowled over at the trade deadline. I can tell you that much for a 2-month rental. Like we've seen in prior seasons, like the prices for those guys are not great. Like look what the Blue Jays paid. It's a bad example because it's a shortened season. They were only getting them for a month. But look what the Blue Jays paid for like Taijuan Walker and Robbie Ray last year. Like you just do not see great prices being paid for rentals anymore. Like I think that, this clubs are just not willing to give up like big like Gleyber Torres type of freaking prospects at deadlines anymore. Like I just think those days are over. So if you really want to like play the asset management game and like you really want to like move a guy when you can get peak value, it kind of has to happen like with a year at least until free agency, if not even 2.
That's right. So even if he does become that most coveted arm, if for guys who are approaching that end of their contract, it's not like teams are going to give up a ton, and obviously that will impact the offers they get and maybe even the decisions they make in the end.
That'll do it for us this week on At The Letters. Ben's on Twitter at B. Nicholson Smith. My name's Arden Zwelling. That's where I'm at on Twitter. Our producers are Christian Ryan and Mike Tassoni. And want to let you know that taking us out this week is an artist from British Columbia who has been in the Canadian music scene since 2015 with his latest single, Made for This. Here's Terrell Safety.